I'm here today with Chef AJ, and we're going to talk about her book, Unprocessed. And I just love this one chapter that you had in there, Chef AJ.
Thank you.
You had this one point where you were talking about the yeah buts, all
Hmm.
the excuses about why I can't do this. And this one we're going to talk about. This one is yeah, but number four, my friends and family aren't going to support me in this way. And
Right.
this one's a real tough one. I
It
mean,
is. It is. The community aspect can be a deal breaker for a lot of people, and that's what seems to cause a lot of people to relapse. And you could ask Dr. Lyle this, but I wonder if it has its basis in evolutionary psychology, where we used to live in small villages,
mhm,
and we pretty much had to go along if we wanted to get along. Now we don't have to necessarily, because in the old days, if we didn't go along with the tribe, we'd be cast out. And in those days, that would mean death. And I think now it doesn't mean certain death, but I think it can feel that way when you feel different than the group. And I always wondered because we dress differently than our
mhm.
friends and family, and we have different hairstyles and different classes, and yet we seem to be able to do that. But when it comes to something as fundamental as eating, it seems like we do want to be like everybody else. It's I never quite understood that.
Well, within the family itself, you're sitting down to the dinner
Hmm.
table, you're
Sure.
having food, I mean, you're sharing it. And it's
Hmm.
almost like that culture, that ethos that you have within the family. I mean,
Right.
didn't your sister do it on her own?
Yeah, she did. So my sister is very introverted. She's very shy, and it's just her and her husband, and the dog. And she was told, she's 6 years older than me, and she was told by her HMO that she had very, very high cholesterol. And they sent her to this special class for people in the warning zone. She didn't want to take medications, and she knew of Dr. McDougall and his work. And I basically coached her from a 14 to a 4, just working on the phone with her. So she
Wow.
did it without any friends and her husband didn't change his way of eating at all. So she was able to do it with the support of just one person.
Hmm.
Could she have done it just by herself? I think there are people out there that can, but I think it does help to have somebody not only in your corner, but somebody that's had the success and the results that you want. So, if you were hiring a trainer at the gym, you wouldn't hire, the 300-pound guy that's, eating pizza. So
Right.
if it, that's why it's so great to work with people that are either have had the success that you seek or at least on the same path of having the success that you're seeking. You wouldn't
Right.
hire Al Capone to do your taxes probably. So if you're hiring a coach or even a mentor, somebody that's at least doing what your goals are. But I think the community, for people, like that old saying, John Donne, no man is an island. People feel lonely and isolated for feeling different.
Mhm.
And it's very hard. We are set up now that it's, I don't want to say failure is guaranteed, but our ancestors had no choice but to eat this way. There was no sugar or oil or salt or
Right.
alcohol or caffeine or flour or anything like that. They basically had to eat whole natural food all day with maybe a little bit of animal products when available. And they had to get a ton of exercise because they were they
Yeah.
had to keep moving, and they absolutely had to go to bed on time or they'd get eaten by predators. And so now the
Yeah.
world is not set up for healthy habits. In fact, it's quite the opposite. So that's what the book The Pleasure Trap's about. So doing the right thing seems difficult and odd, and being unhealthy is what's easiest and the norm. And
Right.
so it is hard for people to be different, I think, for a lot of people. And I think especially for a lot of women, because women are often brought up to be a very agreeable and people pleasers, and they want to please their husband and their family, even if
Hmm.
that means giving them crap that will kill them and make them fat and sick. So I get how hard it is, guys. It is hard. So we know it's hard, but just because something's hard doesn't mean you can't do it.
Right.
It's
Well,
just you have.
families can sometimes sabotage you.
Oh my God! I think families are the worst. I mean seriously, because the guy you meet on the street doesn't really care, if you're losing weight or getting healthy.
Right.
But I think part of it is that it depends, because I think if they are suffering with their weight or a health issue, and then you go ahead and how dare you get slender and healthy,
Right.
and they don't go along, well, now you're holding up a mirror to them. And I think that's uncomfortable for people, because most people would rather, like an ostrich, just stick their head in the sand
Yeah.
until like they have a heart attack or get a diagnosis of diabetes and really not deal with it. And so if you do that, it can be very confronting to them, because I think they perceive it as a loss of status, that means you don't love them or won't love them or maybe will leave them. And that sometimes does happen, but not because you got healthy, usually because the relationship was not healthy.
Right. Well,
You know,
what advice can you give us? I mean, when you do have families like that are
yeah.
sabotaging, or what
Well,
advice?
I'm not sure what to do if they're sabotaging, but if they're just not supportive. There's a difference between not supportive and sabotaging, because sabotaging,
Right.
to me, that's unacceptable and you need to either seek some kind of counseling or just get out. But if they're just not supportive, because a lot of times, see, we talked on the last module about addiction, and a lot of
Right.
times it's not because they don't love you, but they're addicted too. And if all of a
Yes.
sudden you don't want dairy because you know it's linked to cancer, and you want to get rid of their cheese and ice cream, and they're addicts, that can be really, really difficult. So, Dr. Lyle has a lot of free videos on his website, esteemdynamics.org. One of them that I would recommend for this situation is getting along without going along.
That's a great one.
Because, yeah, if you can talk to them, see, now I'm like you, I'm an Aries, and I have a kind of different personality. And it's like, hey, this is the way it is. But if you're not a disagreeable person, what you can do is use what he calls the SEAM strategy, where you just say, hey, I read this book called The China Study, didn't read the whole thing, seems to make sense. My doctor seems to think I should try it. Seems to be, so because the thing is then you're still giving them status, or at least you're not taking status away from them. That can work for some people.
Mm-hmm.
But, it just depends how severe your disease or addiction is, because what I found really can help is if, at least people that I work with that really did suffer from a true food addiction, was really explaining it to their families, the cost of saying things like, I really suffer with this problem, and I really like to enlist your support in helping me, because I love you guys and I want to be here, and I'm afraid that if I don't get healthy, one day you'll wake up and I won't be lying next to you. And so you can have them watch some of the videos that we've done with Dr. Lyle, like Mastering the Environment, but I think sometimes just communicating to them the severity of the problem. And again, it's your problem, that you're not making them bad or wrong. So you say to them, look, you don't have to change. You can continue to eat anything you want, but I need you to please eat these foods outside the home.
Right.
And I have found, we've only worked with a couple thousand people, but a truly loving, supportive family will support the person, because you're not telling them you have to eat like me. You're saying to them, just like an alcoholic, I think a family would understand if one of the family members had alcoholism, they would understand that doesn't mean they have to stop drinking, but they can't have alcohol in the house. You have to explain it to them like that, so they understand that. And that's often what it takes is that degree of explanation. And a lot of times they're ashamed because they don't understand, because if they're an addict living with a non-addict, they don't understand why they can't just have a little bit of stuff. So there's no shame. You just, would you feel ashamed if you had diabetes? It's the same thing. It's a biogenetic disease. It's not your fault, but it's your responsibility now that you know to do something about it. And that often involves having some very difficult conversations, with your family. As I mentioned before, if they refuse to keep the non-compliant foods out of the house, you just buy them these food safes, and they have the combination to their crap, and separate the food as much as you can.
That's great.
Yeah, it's exactly great. It is cool. I haven't had to use it, thank goodness, because we don't have any non-compliant food in the house. But that has worked for some people where they won't. And sometimes therapy is needed, either for the individual that's not being supported, or as a couple, because
you've got to get the mind. You've got to get your why. Why is it you want to do this?
Yeah. And even with the why, if you don't have the support, and when I say the support, not necessarily just the support of the family, but the support of the environment, because the problem, I think, Jean, the biggest problem is when the family doesn't support you, is that the environment you're living in, it doesn't support you. Because when they don't support you, I have clients that are like, okay, you do this, I don't want to do this, I'll eat the burgers outside the house, but they insist on having the crap that tempts the person in the house. And to me, that's I don't want to say criminal, but it's not, it's cruel. It's very, it makes it very hard for the person to recover.
It does. It does. Yeah. It really does. Well, share the story of Pamela. I love this one.
Well, so we used to run, now it's called the Ultimate Weight Loss Program, but about 10 years ago, John Pierre and I used to call it the 30-day unprocessed challenge. And this gal, there was always, we don't have a winner anymore, but the winner was not necessarily a person that lost the most weight, but maybe had the most profound changes in cholesterol, things like that. And she did, because she wasn't that overweight to begin with, but she had very high cholesterol and didn't want to go on medication. So she won the challenge. She got down to a size 6, and she put a photo of herself on Facebook in a bikini. And nobody cared that she was healthy and her disease markers that she posted about, but she lost weight. It's so funny, because when we do the graduation, people would say, oh, my cholesterol went down, I got off my diabetes medication. People were like, oh, that's nice. I lost 10 pounds. And it would be like,
Yeah, right,
because, and it's funny because I recently talked to Dr. Lyle. He said, at least with women, they don't necessarily care if they're healthy. They want to be thin. So
yeah.
maybe that's
But that's it.
true or
We
not.
need to get healthy. I mean, and
No,
if we look great, that's great too. But
well, the good news is the diet that you and I follow, which is like the McDougall maximum weight loss or the ultimate weight loss. If we follow that diet, we get both. That's the beauty of these foods is they heal us from the inside out and they make us look our best. So it's a win-win.
It is totally, absolutely. Yeah. Well, I mean, and we talked a little bit about the support, but there's other things like there's your group. We're doing it in 10-day challenges. We started doing plant-based groups and getting people around the country to start their own plant-based groups. So that's very exciting.
Right. And there's Meetup. Meetup is a great organization because if you don't see one, it's first of all, it's only $12 a month if you want to be an organizer. But just to join, you go to www.meetup.com. And in the search box, you put your interest. Maybe it's scuba diving. Maybe it's Frisbee playing. Maybe it's healthy eating. And then you put in how many miles you're willing to travel. And it will show you every meetup. And if you don't see one that resonates with you, start one like I did and be very specific in the description. Our friends in Orange County, Shada, who lost 100 pounds in the Ultimate Weight Loss Program, she might make a great interview for you too as well. They started one because there was nothing in Orange County. They've got like 50 people every month coming to a potluck, and they have speakers, and because they didn't see one, and they were very specific that this is a no oil, whole food, aka vegan group, and for $12 a month, it's it's a great way to get support. And
I've got meetup.com in plant-based Westchester.
Nice.
So, and for New York. So,
nice.
So I've got a good group of people, and I post in there where I'm going to be lecturing, where we're having meetups, and and I'm starting to get in my area restaurants that are doing meetups in their restaurant that'll do plant-based. They'll create desserts or dishes, and we'll go there and have that, and get just to have a socialite, social evening. So that's one of the ways. But there's also the CHIP program. There's the McDougall boards. We talked about Meetup, but I think also too. We touched a little bit about this, but we need to explain why it's so important to the family, and perhaps maybe scheduling if it's possible, because some of them are resistant. Maybe you could do a family movie night and show like Forks Over Knives or Plant Pure Nation, or there's Eating You Alive now. There's What the Health.
What the Health? Yep.
Yeah, that's a good one. And just show these people. I'll never forget one of my girlfriends. She'd been married for, I think, 44 years. And so they came over for dinner, and we were going to show the movie, Forks Over Knives. And she's like, I'm just going to tell you right now, my husband is not going to do this. He will not. I know my husband. We've been married for 44 years. I showed him the movie, Forks Over Knives. The next day, he gave up dairy. Wow. I mean, he didn't give up meat, but he gave up dairy. He saw the research. He saw the impact of it the next day. And she was like stunned. So when you start to see, and I think also too, when you get that phone call that changes your life, that's also an impetus to help people to say, I'm sick, I have problems, I have cancer or diabetes, and I need your help to change and reverse this. So, go ahead.
No, I was just going to say, the reality is that sometimes one partner will not change, and that can be very difficult. And then the whole relationship often becomes a fight about it. Like I remember when my uncle went to medical school in Geneva, and he's American, and so he met and fell in love with my aunt, who was Swiss French. And Europe is very, very common for people in Europe to smoke today. And back then, this was the 40s. Everybody was smoking. Well, so he graduates medical school, and he learns that smoking's not good, and so he quit smoking. Well, she didn't sign up for that. He knew her as a smoker, and she always remained a smoker. But the whole marriage was it always drove me crazy to be around them, because he was always commenting and criticizing her smoking, and she had to smoke outside the house. And then finally one day he just couldn't take it anymore. He just started smoking again, because it was easier to just smoke than to have to deal with the smoking. And I see that what happens with the people with the food. It's like they have to use so much resolve and willpower to fight against having all these foods in the house when the spouse or the family's resistance, that one day they just say, I just can't take it anymore. And I see that in the relapse, and it's
Yeah.
sad, but it is a reality that they may never change. And you do this for you. And, you know, the hope is you get healthy, and maybe that will inspire them, or maybe they just won't come along right away, but maybe at some point they will.
Well, I also think too, if you can get the family involved in cooking and picking recipes. I'm going up on vacation with my daughter, and my daughter's quite not eating this way yet. So I'm going to take cookbooks and say, pick some recipes, and we're going to cook out of these books.
Yeah, that's always, it's so fun, especially kids. If you get kids involved, they'll eat what they make. And the other thing you can do is, I always tell people that if the woman is the one making the food, that you give your family the same two choices we got growing up: take it or leave it. But that doesn't mean they can't have their crap. You make one healthy meal.
Right.
If they want to go out and get a piece of meat and put it on the grill, they can do it. But they are responsible for buying it, procuring it, and cooking it. And it's the same thing with all the other crap. A lot of times what happens is, especially, in the case of a man who's working, it's like, the first couple nights he puts the grill up, and then it turns out, hey, the lentil loaf is pretty good. And eventually it's just, he stops. He becomes what I call an accidental vegan. And,
right.
I have a funny story. Dr. Goldhammer said that one of his patients, a female patient that was quite ill and ended up eating this way and got healthy, but the husband was not on board at all. And I think he was even still smoking. She said something to the effect of him to, like, honey, can you please check your life insurance policy? Because now she had gotten healthy and everything. And he goes, well, why? He goes, well, I just want to make sure that it's enough so that I have a better quality of life with my next husband. He was so freaked out by that he quit smoking, and he actually got healthy. So, and then I've heard wives say to their husbands, saying, I'm not going to wipe your ass when you have a stroke, telling you that right now. So, different psychologies respond to different types of talking to, but right. I think to ignore it is not a great thing, especially if it's somebody you're married to, is like your best friend. I mean, you would hope they would support you, because even if they didn't want to do it, it's just, if you like gardening and they don't, like, do they say, well, you can't garden? They'd still like you to have, enjoyment in life. So I think, like anything else, if they don't support you, it's either because they themselves are so addictive or so scared that you're going to get healthy and leave them, or maybe there was a problem in the relationship before this. And this is just an example of yet another way that they don't support you.
Well, what's the 2-bite rule that you have?
Oh, when you're trying a new food. Yeah. I mean, I've heard about pediatricians talk about this with children. Not everybody has to like everything, but people should at least have to take 2 bites of a new food, because the truth is a new food will only become a preferred food if you continue to expose it. It can take up to 15 tries. Look, I don't think anybody out there that was eating the standard American diet or a sugar addict liked kale the first time they tried it. When I think about it, it was like I thought about when the gardener mows the lawn, and I felt like, this is disgusting. But I knew it was really good, and everybody was talking about it, and I kept trying it. I kept trying it in different ways, and I love it now. And so I think people should have to at least try new foods, especially children, because palates will change eventually.
Right. Oh, absolutely.
And if you can hide food in food. So in other words, most people like marinara sauce on things, whether it's on a baked potato or on pasta. And when you make a marinara sauce from scratch, you can be hiding a ton of vegetables in there, even spinach, where people, carrots and an onion and all kinds of things, even beets. You can hide so many vegetables in a sauce where they won't know. And, smoothies, I don't recommend them for weight loss, but for people that won't eat any vegetables, in my book, The Nutrient-Rich Chocolate Smoothie, it's made with spinach, but you don't taste it because of the cocoa powder and the dates. So especially if kids don't see you make it, or your husband, you can actually hide healthy food in food that they'll eat, So you just have to learn some cooking tricks, and, just again, like if they won't eat vegetables, find the one they hate the least and just keep offering it. The other thing is when we talk about the pleasure trap, seek pleasure, avoid pain, conservation of energy, most people, especially children, even if you tell them, aren't going to go want to make their own dinner. So healthy food is all that's available. Your family will eat it, especially if it's beautifully prepared and cut up. So for example, if when they open the refrigerator, all they see is a big tray of brightly colored fruits that are cut up. You see, people may not actually eat a banana, apple, and orange, seriously, because it's like too much effort. You got to peel the banana, you got to cut. And the orange. But if people, like kids come home from school hungry, and instead of, cookies and milk, if they saw a tray of like skewers with the little pieces of fruit on it. Kids love that. Or you could make the dip in my book on process where they, kids love to dip things, or bite-sized. Kids like bite-sized things like hummus. And most people like hummus, even if they're not vegan. It's one of those universal kind of foods. So if you have the healthy food available, not just for yourself, but for them, they probably will eat it. And again, the familiar foods that are, there's so many plant-based foods like okay, guacamole. I mean, I know it's high in fat, but people eat guacamole of all walks of life. So if you have some of the healthier choices available, I think people will eat it and they will like it. Or maybe you can institute, meatless Mondays at your house, or just like you say, get them involved in the recipes, have a movie night. Let's be fair, when it's your birthday and your husband says, what do you want? Well, what I want is 87 minutes of your time to watch Forks Over Knives with me, for the husband that said no. I mean, if he's going to say no on your birthday, then first of all, he's saving a lot of money, and he's kind of a jerk if he won't even watch it. But I've had a lot of people say they won't, and you know why they won't watch it? Because if they watch it, they may be compelled to make a change. It's sort of like the people that don't want to know what's going on in the world, or see those commercials of the orphans that are starving, because if they see and they know about it, they might have to give $1, So a lot of people don't want to know, and I get it, so.
Well, a lot of people don't understand there's a cause and effect relationship between what you're eating and your health.
Well, how could they when their doctor doesn't understand it? I mean, think about it. Their doctors get almost no nutritional training in medical school. And when they get diabetes and heart disease, they're like, they don't read the research of Dr. Esselstyn. It's like Dr. Kim Williams, the former head of the American College of Cardiology, says there's only two kinds of cardiologists: vegan and those that haven't read the data. And the doctors don't read the data because they then they might have to change. I mean, so it's tough. Because people say, well, my doctor says I can't eat starch because I'm a diabetic, and it's like, well, because your doctor's not Dr. McDougall, because he never took nutrition or learned anything about it. So it's really hard because we revere doctors so much and we put them on a pedestal, and we feel, well, if food could really reverse heart disease, diabetes, autoimmune disease, certain cancers, and prevent it in the first place, I go to the best doctor in my town. Everybody says so. So wouldn't he know this? Well, no, because he didn't learn nutrition in medical school.
I know. I mean, and it's amazing though. As soon as, you could be eating all this crap. Totally.
Nobody says a word.
And nobody says a word. But as soon as you start to eat healthy, everybody becomes a nutritionist.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, I remember I used to weigh almost 200 pounds and smoke cigarettes, and I don't think I ate at McDonald's. Maybe I got some fries. Nobody said anything, and then I started eating kale, and it's like, well, don't you know about the oxalates in kale? They're very high in oxalates. I don't even know what now I know, but it's like, no, it's just so funny, or protein. Spinach. Oh, the E. coli in spinach. There's no E. coli in spinach. The E. coli comes from the cows pooping, and it's always that people drive me crazy.
Protein. How about that one?
Oh, yeah. Oh, my God. 40 years of vegan. If I had a nickel for every time I said, where'd you get your protein? But now I just say from human flesh of annoying people like you that keep asking me that question.
I like that.
Well, I don't know what to say because, I say to them, a lot of times I'll say, where do I get my protein? I go, where do you get your zinc and your phosphorus? And they look at me like, I don't know. Well, where do you get your selenium? They concentrate. It's no.
Just on that protein. My knee-jerk reaction, because I tend to, I'm not the quiet, it seems to be Doug Lyle.
No, me neither.
No.
Me neither.
So I go, do you even know how much protein you're supposed to have in a day?
Yeah.
Do you even know how much?
Yeah.
Do you even know how much is in kale or spinach?
Or
broccoli? Did you know there was protein in broccoli? No, I bet you didn't.
And more than in steak. Yeah, I know.
Right?
It's tough.
Oil.
It's tough.
How about oil?
Oh my God, that is.
No, but coconut oil.
Oh yeah, cuckoo for coconut oil. People think of oil as some kind of miracle health food because of some of these books that we read, not that we read, but that are out there, like Eat Fat, Get Thin, and watching shows, certain television shows that will remain nameless. And, it astounds me that whether people eat sugar or not, nobody says sugar's a health food. I think it's universal now that it's probably not good for most people, at least at the doses that are taking it. And because it's a junk food, and the definition of a junk food is a food that's basically high in calories and low in nutrients. Well, oil is more than twice as calorically dense as sugar. and it has probably even fewer nutrients. It's just liquid fat.
It is.
And for people to think, oh well, my brain needs health, and it's like,
well, that's what they say.
My brain needs fat.
Oh my God, I got to tell you this one. I was in Whole Foods, and this person, and I was sitting there talking about, like the different hummuses, and I said, this one has a lot of oil in it, so I don't get that. So well, I'm a medical doctor, and you need to have fat and oils for your brain to be functioning and healthy.
Really?
And I just looked at her like, really?
God, I should be dead now.
Yeah, tell me your practice so I don't go there, please.
Right. Well, it's been 10. I haven't had oil in 10 years, so I'm surprised my brain's working at all. Yeah, it's tough. Yeah. It is very tough because even what's interesting is even people, when you explain it to them and they get it intellectually, they're like, but you can't cook without oil. Like you can't saute. They haven't been learned. It's not really their fault necessarily because they really don't know. But the thing about oil that's so beautiful is even people that don't want to be vegan or all the way vegan, if you stop oil, you lose weight. I mean, it's really the easiest thing of all. It's 4,000 calories a pound, no fiber. I always say to people, especially these doctors or these paleo people that promote oil. I mean, there was no oil in the caveman days. There was no processing, and there's no oil ponds in nature right now. And I always feel like if you just go back to what is found in nature and eat that, you're going to be going the right direction. Right. Oil's a processed food. No fiber, no nutrients, no vitamins, minerals, phytochemicals, antioxidants, and micronutrients. And I always say to people, look, if you really believe that there's something beneficial that you need in the coconut oil or the olive oil or the flax oil, wouldn't it also be in the olive, the coconut, or the flax? And they go like, yeah. I go, well, since nothing miraculous happens in the processing and it's 10 times as calorically dense, why not just take the flaxseed or the coconut or the olive? Exactly. Again, process a food, you make it nutrient rich, calorie poor. And that's why I wrote on process. We are not designed to eat processed food.
Well, I think we also have to shift that mentality, within our head, But also, too, I think there was that huge disservice when somebody came out with the Mediterranean study, and what did we take away from that?
Yeah, that we're supposed to add oil and wine instead of we're supposed to plow the fields and eat fruits and vegetables.
Right. Or I love this one. I about had a seizure when this came out. There was Time magazine had on the front of it that curl of butter.
Oh yeah,
and said eat butter.
Butter's back, yeah. And didn't Bob Harper put butter in his coffee and then have a heart attack?
I don't know. I didn't hear that one, but
well, was the trainer on The Biggest Loser, and he recently had a heart attack. And my understanding was he was putting butter in his coffee. So, and at one point he was vegan, but it was too difficult, or I don't know.
Oh my gosh. Anyway.
I don't know. People really don't make the connection like you say, because, it wasn't until I honestly look, and I don't blame people because if their doctor's not educated, why would they be educated? And it wasn't until I went to the Optimum Health Institute and nurses and doctors started explaining there's a profound connection between what we eat and how we look and how we feel and what diseases we get and what diseases we could reverse. I never thought that. I just figured everything was genetic, My family was fat, sick, diabetic with cancer, and I figured, that's what's going to happen to me. And it would have. And it actually almost did. So make the connection,
Well, it is. I mean, you just don't wake up with cancer.
No, it takes years to form, years to develop.
I mean, you just don't wake up and have dementia or Alzheimer's. I mean, that was years in the process.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, and at some point you can reverse some of these things because, like, the standing joke around my house is, honey, have you seen my keys? That's the standing joke, But when it gets to the point of, honey, have you seen the car? You're starting to get into the gray
or when
zone.
It's like, who are you, honey? Are you my honey?
We can't fix that, when we get to that point. But along that way, you're building this up. So you just don't wake up one day and have Alzheimer's. I mean, or how about your dad?
Oh my God. My dad wasn't overweight like my mom, who was morbidly obese, but we were raised on the standard American Jewish diet. And he always ate a big piece of kosher salami from Sinai 48 every single day and had he had several heart attacks before I was even born. I remember as a child, I don't know if we had ambulances in the 60s because there was a machine called a pulmotor. that would literally come to our house. I always thought my dad was dying. It was like Red Fox, and there was this machine called like a truck called a pull motor. Maybe it was the fire department that would have to administer oxygen. And, he died as a result of failed open heart surgery. And it wasn't a pleasant death because he didn't die on the operating table. He died. It took 3 weeks of languishing with a tracheotomy and a feeding tube and tied down and unable to speak. And, and I'm thinking, for a piece of salami, this is, is it worth it for, maybe a cupcake. No, I'm just kidding. I'm just kidding. It's not worth it for a cupcake.
No, I had my cousin's husband totally, and I saw him in the last couple of years of his life, and he couldn't move. And he kept eating all these things, and he got quite overweight. And I said, you can change a lot of this. And I don't know if you could change it at this point, that you're at, but you can make certainly your life more comfortable. And he's like, if I couldn't live with these foods, then it's not worth living.
Then you're pretty sure it's an addiction. And people say, well, I've heard this so many times because I've been vegan 40 years. Well, if I was vegan like you, I don't know if I'd live longer, but I think it would seem like it. But it's not about living longer. It's about living better. And the debility that people have the last years of their life, and the amount of expense for medical treatment they have. It's not like the people are living longer and living better. They're in nursing homes. For years I volunteered in nursing homes and assisted living, and these people can't even get out of a chair, and they have to have people change their diapers. Is it worth it for your favorite foods? But
and even just now, like okay, I'm not that I'm not at with a walker or anything yet. But and I go up and on vacation with friends up to Cape Cod. I love Cape Cod, and I love to go kayaking and biking and hiking. And when I go up with friends, I have to oh, you can't bike. Oh, okay, I shouldn't bring the bicycles. Oh, you can't kayak either. Oh my God. Okay. Can you walk?
Got to get some younger, healthier friends.
I do.
That's the thing, though. So when we were, you brought up an interesting point, is because a lot of people, especially older people, have had the same circle of friends for a very long time. And if you change, you sort of rock the boat a little bit, And so I'm not telling people they have to get rid of their friends, and they certainly can't get rid of their family. But you may want to try making some new friends that support your healthy habits and healthy lifestyle.
And can do the same things. I love going kayaking. I love it. And to have somebody else to go with, and partly my husband can't go all the time, the same times that I do, because I have summers off because I'm a teacher. So, I'm always looking for people to go kayaking with. And it's like, to try and find somebody that can do the same things that I can do, to be able to lift the kayaks and put them up on top of the roof rack, and, to take them down, to put them into the lake, and then paddle around, instead of sitting there going, my arm hurts, really?
Yeah.
We've only been doing this for an hour. I'll go out kayaking all day long. My husband and I go down rivers. We've gone down 10 miles and on the rivers, without blinking. We love it. But most of our friends can't do this.
Yeah, it's tough, because see, you're the one that changed, and so I actually when I didn't when I went, I didn't lose any friends because from becoming vegan, because I went vegan at 17. So that was never a problem, because I was a junk food vegan and there was always something to eat. But in 2003, when I started becoming a healthier vegan, without the sugar and the oil and the salt, I actually lost friends, and because they were like, well, you're no fun anymore because you don't want to go get vegan pizza. And I'm like, well, we could go hiking, we could go to paint night, movies. No, because these were people, I don't know if it's necessarily that misery likes company, but it's funny because I heard Dr. Dean Ornish speak at the Plantrician Conference last year, and he said that you are something like 40% more likely to be overweight or obese if your friends are than even if your blood relatives are.
Wow.
And so it's you got to watch, who you're spending time with. And I know that when I lost weight, now as a thin person now, people that meet me, it's never a problem, or people I become friends with, but I have lost friends and jealousy, ostensibly. Because, it's just not the ones that are also slender, but the ones that did not change. So that is a real reality. And some people, that's too painful for them. And, I guess it just depends what you want.
And it's interesting because I'm on marriage number 2, and I have 2 stepdaughters, and I have 2 kids. And it's interesting to see, because my kids come from a family that both sides are obese on that side. And my husband's side, his children are not.
Mm.
And it was interesting because my stepdaughter came to a family event on my side of the family, and we were opening up presents. And she held up, we gotten her this beautiful shirt, and my brother made a comment that, oh my God, is that a shirt for a human being? You know,
Because it was small.
because
Yeah.
it was small, it was very tiny. She's tiny. She's very
Yeah.
tiny. And that's just the mindset. Or even like, for example, when she comes over, I'll put a serving out, and it's too huge for her. And I have to like change my mindset, because it's like I have to dial the portions down, because I'm still used to that fat side of my family
Mm-hmm.
where, you know, and I had a huge breakthrough. We went on vacation, and we went to Ben and Jerry's, and we got a vegan ice cream. Normally, because we were on vacation, and I said, okay, we're on vacation. I would normally go in and get 3 or 4 scoops. I'm not
Mm-hmm.
kidding, because I
Yeah.
love ice cream. And this time, I went in, I got a little tiny cup,
Mm-hmm.
and just had a little tiny bit of ice cream in this cup, and I ate it, and I was okay with that. And that was like huge for
Wow.
me. Huge. That was a
I
huge.
didn't even know they had vegan ice cream there because he had a heart attack, didn't he? Either
And
Ben or
they and there
Jerry.
was a big article, I think, in the paper, that they were talking about this, how that he's starting to realize that what they're doing, and they're starting to come out with, they have a whole line of vegan ice cream, which
I did not know that.
I was really surprised, because we were in Burlington, Vermont, and which is like the where it started, and
Wow.
we thought at the flagship store that they would have a whole array of no, they had one flavor. I'm like, are
Oh
you
my
kidding me?
God, that's
Are you
crazy.
kidding me? One flavor? Seriously?
That's
You've got a
hilarious.
whole bunch of vegan flavors, and you got one.
That's
So,
hilarious.
but I had that one, and I had a little cup of ice cream, and I was okay. But that was,
Nice.
changing that mindset
Mm-hmm.
of within that. It is. And you had
It
one
takes
more.
time.
It does. You had one more "ya butt" in the series, and I just want to touch
Oh,
base on it.
yeah.
Because
It,
people say that, oh my God, I've got too much stress
well,
in my life, or
welcome
this is
to
going to be too hard.
welcome to living, because
Right? Right?
I've never met a single person that's breathing that doesn't have stress. That is part of
Yeah.
life. And so you have to find ways to mitigate your stress instead of medicate your stress. And one
Right.
of the best ways to do that is with exercise, regular daily exercise. Movement
Exercise.
doesn't have to be hitting the gym, but taking a walk,
Right.
walking your dog first thing in the morning.
Right.
Because the thing is stress actually causes us to have cravings, and that's part of the problem. It's a huge cravings trigger, and I don't know how anyone's not going to have stress as long as they're alive. That's just part of life,
It's life.
and
Yep.
so I'm sure our ancestors had stresses too, with different kinds of stresses. And so it's just, now it's so easy to medicate your stress because there's always a vending machine or a break
Yeah.
room, and all these drugs are around. Even alcoholics, they can't necessarily medicate all. I mean, some maybe do at work, but for the most part, it's usually often when they come home from work. Because could you imagine, like, if everywhere you can go to places where there's no alcohol and cocaine, but you can't go anywhere where there's not some
Oh,
processed crap. Even the
yeah.
hospitals, like the hospital I volunteer
Right.
at, we're not talking about the cafeteria, we're talking about the parking lot has vending machines. And it's like, what, so that I can eat something before I go to the emergency room? I mean, this is, and oh my God, the emergency room, it's just all the vending machines, it's just
They're awful.
crazy.
It's awful.
So yes, I appreciate that you have stress. Everyone does. So we have to find ways to deal with it. Maybe it's talk therapy, maybe it's exercise, maybe it's looking at the source of your stress. But of course, if you have stress, you're going to want to do anything you can to feel better. So you got to find ways to feel better that don't involve destructive behaviors, and it can be done, but find something that's not going to harm you. But
Right.
I think everybody that I know, I don't know one person that doesn't have stress. It waxes and wanes, but
Right.
it's an unfortunate part of life. But that's really what it is.
And learning how to deal with it.
That's the most important thing people can do. And I think driving is, like, at least in LA, that's a big source of stress for a lot
Oh
of
my
people. And that's
God.
why, people are in their cars because it's so stressful being in traffic. So
Road rage.
exercise is one of the best ways I know. I mean, sex, you can't really have sex, in the car. You can't really have exercise in the car, but doing these things proactively, and, meditation and mindfulness, there's all kinds of ways that, whatever it is for you, getting a punching bag, something, but find ways to dissipate your stress, because otherwise you're just going to eat your stress. And
Yeah. Right.
Yeah.
Well, thank you, AJ. Once
Of
again, it's
course.
always been a fantastic evening,
Sure. It's
and
always fun chatting with you.
it is. It is. I
Yeah.
love it. I love it. Well, thank you so much. I appreciate
Of
your time.
course. Well, thank you.